For decades, the enterprise has been built around a simple assumption. People do the work, and software helps them do it. Increasingly, though, the user of enterprise systems isn't always a person. Agentic AI can now operate software on its own. And if your infrastructure wasn't designed for autonomous action, this transition could expose both weaknesses and vulnerabilities. The new paradigm of Agentic AI is coming fast, and your infrastructure better be prepared. To get a deeper insight to Agentic AI, I sat down with 3 experts. Brian Sathianathan, co-founder of Iterate.ai, which builds end-to-end private AI solutions. Sriharsha MS, a principal generative AI specialist who has been at the forefront of building Agentic AI use cases for AWS. And Kaladhar Voruganti, senior technologist at Equinix.
Agentic AI is basically Gen AI and agent technology. And now you're combining them and you're solving meaningful business problems.
Agent is not just a model, but it's the whole system. The model provides the reasoning, but the reliability actually comes from the surrounding architecture like data, tools, and guardrails and the whole operating model.
Agentic AI is like an extremely motivated employee. He will do whatever it takes to get the job done.
But are these highly motivated agents catching on with businesses? Very much so. 39% of respondents from a McKinsey survey in November 2025 said their organizations had begun experimenting with AI agents, while an additional 23% are scaling an agentic AI system somewhere in the enterprise. That means more than half of enterprises are already running or experimenting with agents. But the infrastructure conversation, it's lagging well behind.
Now, as companies are thinking about deeper production and experiences at scale, it's all about how do I provide security, how do I provide guardrails, how do I provide observability into that. And every conversation is around that as agentic process scales.
The bandwidth requirements are changing. You need a lot more uplink bandwidth because of multimodal data sets. And you also need low latency in some of these new emerging use cases. So latency is also very important.
So how are these agents performing? Are they capable of running real business processes?
In banking, a lot of the content comes in through various forms. Forms filled, scanned documents. So the input is very chaotic. With agentic and the ability for large language models to understand unstructured really well, you can have dynamic processing of content and you can build downstream workflows that are agent-driven that can process an entire loan or various applications through the flow much more gracefully.
In fact, AI agents used in lending workflows today have reduced turnaround time by 50 to 70% and cut manual workload by up to 60%. And underwriting that once took days to weeks can now happen at machine speed, as long as your GPU infrastructure is ready for it.
From a compute standpoint, increasingly, depending on the type of agent, you will need potentially more compute. For example, reasoning type of agents, you will need to have a GPU-based compute.
Agentic AI has basically created an entirely new workload. With multiple autonomous agents operating across the enterprise at machine speed, we'll need an entirely different infrastructure to support it. So what will that infrastructure look like? And what will it take to build it? Let's take a deeper look, starting with where the rules are enforced.
As an enterprise, you don't want to be going to 10 different locations to set your policies and access control rights. And so companies are looking for a way to basically in a single location set their policies. You need data path IO monitoring so that every query that an employee is posing or a response from a model, you have to make sure that the guardrail policies of the company are being enforced and adhered to.
Next, if multiple autonomous agents are working together and interacting across models, tools, and enterprise systems, what infrastructure is directing and governing that activity? In other words, where does control live?
Think of it like a traffic cop in the middle, where between all these agents and models and MCP servers that are talking to each other, I want to have a traffic cop in the middle of an neutral interconnection hub so that between the clouds, between the SaaS and the clouds, and between the private enterprises, all the traffic is going through this traffic cop who's enforcing guardrail policies, observing things, making sure that the SLAs are being met.
Traffic isn't just about data anymore, it's about decisions. And though distributed infrastructure needs centralized control, it's still only part of the equation.
They are looking at more AI-aware firewalls which can understand queries and responses from the models. They're looking at more observability tools which can go across the clouds so that you have a multi-cloud going across SaaS companies. They're looking at gateways because increasingly these gateways are coming for agents, for MCP servers, for models, which are able to tell other agents which target agent to choose or model to choose based on cost, based on performance, based on model accuracy, based on compliance.
And this leads us to an even bigger question. What does this mean for security, privacy, and risk?
Security and privacy is going to be a big play in here, right? A lot of the prior security concepts have to be rethought through a little bit because this is a different world. It's a very autonomous driven world.
And that's the part many enterprises still haven't fully reckoned with. We're moving from a world where AI simply returns information to one where it can take action on its own. The problem is, organizations are deploying these agents faster than they're putting the right governance around them. SailPoint found that 80% of organizations have already seen AI agents operate outside their intended boundaries. So without guardrails, identity checks, and real-time verification, agents can easily move beyond what they were meant to do. That makes centralized governance essential.
I don't know if you saw the recent LinkedIn post that someone was trying to give a goal to a bot to do some task. And it figured out this particular person who gave the goal didn't have the right API key. It went and figured out his colleague's API key, logged in as his colleague and got the work done. So when you give the objective, these things will actually use whatever manner to get the objective fulfilled. That's why it's very critical to guardrail them.
In other words, the agent's behavior wasn't a bug, it was a feature. And this is precisely why the guardrails have to be architectural, not aspirational. In the end, the Agentic AI revolution isn't just about intelligence, it's about architecture. Yes, these systems are changing how work gets done, but they're also forcing enterprise leaders to rethink infrastructure and governance in a much different way. Because in the agentic world, competitive advantage comes down to reliability. And reliability doesn't live in the model alone. It lives in the infrastructure around it. So the question is no longer whether agentic AI is coming, it's whether your infrastructure is ready to handle it.